Hey, beautiful human. Welcome back to season 3. I cannot believe that we are kicking off season 3 today of the Bold Women in Business podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Honeyman, founder of Honey Be Bold, and I just can't wait to share this whole juicy season with you. We are having more intimate conversations, bolder truth telling. This whole season is all about getting deeper on the topics that are going to help you run the most values-driven, growth-centered business possible. Today, though, is about something that is super important to me and meaningful and something that I've been thinking a lot about, and that is the idea of generosity in business. If there is one value that I could point to that has quietly powered my entire business and really helped my business grow to the point that it has, it is generosity. So today I wanted to bring on someone really special to talk about this topic because he fully embodies this. So today we're going to be talking with my friend, my colleague, my client, Jonathan Corrales, who's really the first person that I thought of when I thought about talking about generosity. You'll see from this conversation that he embodies this in such a beautiful way. And I just thought that this conversation would be such a great way to kick off season 3, to really set the tone and center us on some really key topics, some key ideas that are going to help us build the businesses that really fuel us and help us make the biggest impact that we can. So I can't wait to dive into this conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hey, beautiful human. You're listening to Bold Women in Business, the show where strategy meets soul in marketing, branding, and business growth. I'm your host, Rachel Honeyman, messaging and branding strategist, content queen, and compulsive meaning maker. Every week, I'll help you ditch the cookie cutter playbook and build a brand that actually sounds like you, sells like hell, and feels so damn good to show up for. Let's get bold. Hi, Jonathan. Thank you so much for being here and joining me for this special season premiere. Can you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'm very honored to be here. I know that we're friends, but I'm also sort of a fan of what you've been doing, and I've been following you since you did your rebrand, and I just think this is phenomenal. So anyways, my name is Jonathan. I am an interview coach for people in tech, and I help people that have been laid off get back to work as quickly as possible.
Such a valuable, necessary service that you're offering, especially in today's environment with just so many layoffs in the tech world and so much uncertainty. I think I'm obviously very familiar with your work. So I want to give a little bit of context of how we know each other because I think it's a cool story. I think that this is how we got connected. LinkedIn randomly, makes those recommendations for people to connect with. And I think it recommended that we connect because we have the same alma mater, which we wound up connecting over that. And turns out we missed each other by a couple of years, but we probably had the same freshman English teacher who was, interesting hippie dude. I don't remember his name, but I remember loving his class. And then we just connected over our shared love of jujitsu. And over time, we got to know each other better. And I think that what really kind of created a connection between us was a shared value in how we run our businesses, even though our businesses are so different. Just kind of our overall approach to how we run business. And so we became friends. We've had a lot of conversations over the years. And I think it's at least 2 years that we've been connected. Yeah. And then you wound up hiring me, which I was so honored to rebrand your company and your website. And so I got even more familiar with your work and the value of what you're offering. So just really love chatting with you always. But the part that I wanted to kind of talk about today, and the reason that I wanted you to come talk about this topic today is, this podcast obviously exists to help people run their businesses better. And there's a very strategic approach to that, of course. But I wanted to really kick off this season by getting to the core of that heart and soul of business and what really connected the two of us, which is approaching business through a lens of generosity and seeing our role in our businesses as how can I help as many people as possible in the most generous way possible. And yes, we have businesses to run, right? We have to pay the bills, we have to pay our teams, all of that. But the foundation underneath the business is really this lens of generosity. And so I wanted to bring you on to talk about this because you embody this in such a core way. And one of the ways that you do this is that you're a natural connector. When you meet someone, you immediately start thinking, who can I connect them with that they can help or can help them? How can I create these connections? And I cannot even count how many people I am now connected with and have become friends with because of connections that you made, because of that perspective. So I wanted to just give that context. So I want to just ask you what generosity means to you in the context of business and how it informs how you run your business.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for all the compliments. Like, I'm still getting used to getting them. It's kind of weird. When I wanted to start my own business, I had no clue like where to even begin. I've been an engineer my entire life, and I did have an opportunity to get into management, which is sort of like where a lot of those kinds of ideas started to come from. Like when I have to build a team, I have to sort of figure out like how people fit together. If we have a gap, in our team, like how do we fill them? And sometimes it's not obvious, how people kind of fit together. So when I started my business, I thought it would be a very sort of lonesome road, no support. I'd have to figure everything out on my own. And along the way, I've had a lot of conversations with people about sales, marketing. One person told me that I need to make sure I have reserves because reserves allow me to pick and choose who I work with, like just all of these different ideas. And when I kind of blended them together, I said, okay, well, I think I kind of know how I would want to approach business. And most of the things that I've read, most of the things that I've seen, business is always like a competition. There's always like this competitiveness to it. And I have learned very quickly that if I work with people, it's a better experience. I don't know that I have a clear-cut answer, but for me, it's always been like, how do I help other people? Because a lot of them have helped me too. I've connected people, a lot of people have connected me with other folks, like with clients, with, people that could help me with my business. And I just feel like if you want to be successful, if you want longevity, you have to be in some sort of team. And even if you're running your own business, you can still have an informal team. You don't have to be part of the same company. So I've brought that to what I do every day.
Yeah, I love that. I'm curious if you have a similar kind of experience as me or similar approach to me. When I first started my business, I hated the very idea of networking. And I think so many business owners just like it feels gross initially when you're like, ugh, networking, right? Like I have to get on a call with someone or go to an event or something and sell myself. And so I avoided networking for a long time because of that. And what shifted for me was when I started approaching, quote unquote networking calls. Like I don't love the term because it feels very transactional. But I think when I started approaching them and I had already made this shift by the time you and I met, where I say, I'm just getting on a call to talk to someone and see how I can help them. And most of the time, that's actually not anything to do with my business, right? Most of the time, I'm getting on a call and maybe the way that I'm helping them is by connecting them to someone else that I know. Maybe it's making a book recommendation. Maybe it's keeping them in mind if I see something that makes me think of them, right? Just approaching those conversations as an opportunity to give of myself instead of selling myself. And that made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first learned about networking, I was probably like a year or two out of college, and my manager gave me a book, and he was big on audiobooks back when audiobooks like were physical. And so he gave me a bunch of CDs, and one of the CDs was How to Win Friends and Influence People. The only thing that I took away from that book, and there's a bunch of stuff in there, I might have to go over it again. The author said this: if you want to make a good connection with someone, be genuinely interested in them. Like ask them questions about themselves, about what they're working on. use their name often. Like, hi, Rachel, it's nice to meet you, Rachel. Rachel, what do you,
Mm-hmm.
like in a way that's a little more organic, but
Mm-hmm.
it's making the other person feel important and feel cared about. Along the years, when it came to sales, like now that I'm running my business, I had to think about sales. The same manager who comes from a sales background, he said to me, like, the thing you want to get to, the state of the conversation is that the other person feels safe. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they need to feel safe so they can open up to you and tell you what are the problems, and then you can have a genuine conversation about how you might be able to solve them. So I've learned that in order to get to that point, we need to lower our defenses. And if I'm always asking you for something, your defenses are going to be up. Like, the moment we
Mm-hmm.
jump on a call, you're going to be like, oh, this person's going to ask for something. But if I give, like what you're saying, if I give value, a book recommendation, an introduction, now the fences go down. And every time we have that interaction, you'll feel more and more safe with me. So I can then have an honest conversation about something you might need or a problem that you're dealing with. So it's sort of like playing the really, really, really long game, And
Yeah.
like when I work with somebody in the stuff I'm doing today, I make an emotional investment in them. And I've found for myself that if I make that investment, I do even better. Like, I'll do better work for them because I
Mm-hmm.
care about them. So those different ideas kind of come together into a blender. And I'm like, okay, this is what makes sense for me, because I'm an introvert. I can't work a room. If I'm someplace, I might have 3 or 4 conversations and then I'm spent. Like, I need to go relax for a weekend.
Yeah.
So I have to do it in a way that feels good for me and feels natural for me. And I found that those things put together, have that genuine interest of somebody, make them feel safe for those conversations, and then talk about problems that they might have and then how I might be able to help. Like, that's what works for me, like in business and sales and my personal relationships.
Yeah, I think that the most important word that you just said is genuine, because I think we've all seen it, like the people who've read How to Win Friends and Influence People, and they use the principles without the genuine part of it, right? I think that you can use those techniques without a genuine emotional investment, and it shows. Right. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that the key is that you need to have that genuine emotional investment, and then those techniques work fantastically, right? Like they're great. But I think that that's really the key, is that for me, when I say I'm taking, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, however long, right, to connect with someone on the other side of the screen. Most of my networking is online. I think most of us are doing that, right?
Yeah.
I don't go to a lot of in-person events, but some people do. But when I have a networking call, right, I'm taking time out of my day to speak with this person, but they're also taking time out of their day to speak to me. And so I don't take that for granted, and I don't want them to take that for granted. And I want to show up for them in a really emotionally connected way. And it could be that I'll speak with this person and like that'll be the last time I ever speak with them, right? Sometimes you speak with someone and it's just like you don't connect. This isn't the right person to be connected with,
Yep.
whatever. But
Yep.
probably most of the time, for me at least, at this point, the people that I'm getting on a call with are people who there's some emotional resonance with. And so, I can tell they're the type of person that I want to spend 30 minutes talking to. And so
Yeah.
I go into that saying, like, how can I show up for them? And it doesn't matter what I get out of it, right? You mentioned this, it's kind of this long game, right? The long game is not, okay, I'm going to go into this conversation with this long game intention of like getting them to hire me or getting them to send me business. That's not, if you do that, then the genuine part is gone, right?
That's right.
But
Exactly.
right, like it's kind of,
Yeah.
it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yes.
But it does happen very, very often that, like, we had a conversation 2 years ago, however long ago, right? I had no thought that you would ever hire me. That was never like the intention, right? You're not actually my like ideal customer profile, right? Like I always say, I market to women who are, doing mission driven work, but I work with people who align with what I want to do. So it's not like I'm not going to work with someone, but you don't fit the profile. And so I never connected with you saying, okay, Jonathan's going to hire me, right?
Yeah.
That was never the intention. But eventually, that is what happened from an organic perspective. I helped you, you helped me, we connect, we see the value of what each other is offering. And when you decided that you were were ready to redo your website, like I was the person who you thought of. So I think that that is just a really good example of like sometimes the long game does pay off, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But I think that it still needs to come from that initial place of, I want to help this person on the other side of the screen or standing in front of me. And what can I do to show up for them? And really tapping into that emotional connection of like, this is a human being in front of me and I'm a human being showing up to connect with them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my entire business model is exactly that. It's helping people who have been in quite literally like the worst moments of their life. You know, they lose their career or they lose their job, however temporary it might be, and they're trying to sort of piece things back together. You know, they're like, well, was it me? Did I do something wrong? Could I have done something to avoid it? You know, and so I have to make that connection with them, because when we're in those sessions where it's just one-on-one, we're talking to each other, I need them to open up and tell me like what are things that are on their mind, because that could be impacting their ability to make a connection with an interviewer or how they show up for an interview. And the same thing with people that are in business with me, like we often share stories with each other about things that have gone wrong. Like the first time I had to fire a client, I lost sleep over that. You know, it was a big deal for me. I didn't want to do that. And I had to, because there just wasn't a fit. And so I would then ask other people like, hey, was this your experience? Have you done this? And they would say, yeah, you got to do that. And then they would tell me why. Sometimes people will say, hey, this person came to me for coaching. I don't think they're a good fit. Would you like to help them out? And I would say, yeah. And then I would do the same thing in reverse. Like we're always trying to support each other behind the scenes. Now on like in front of the scenes, like in front of the curtain, it seems like we're all a bunch of individuals just kind of doing our thing. But at least in my network, behind the scenes, we're always helping each other.
Yeah.
It's part of like the networking part of running a business isn't just like, hey, I just need more business. It's also like, how can I support somebody else? I've done workshops for other coaches. Some coaches send me resumes and they're like, hey, I'm kind of stuck on this. What do you think? I give them my opinion. I do the same thing. Hey, here's a client that I'm struggling with. What's your take? And then, you know, we're constantly, even though technically we're in competition with each other, you know, we might have the same target audience or whatever. That feeling of like, well, I need to guard everything for myself, otherwise someone will beat me. Like that doesn't exist, you know?
I've had the same experience. I have so many people that I'm connected with who on paper do exactly the same thing as me. And we help each other so much. And I think when you can approach business from like that perspective of there's enough to go around and I want my colleagues to succeed just as much as I want me to succeed, right? When you have that perspective, it is so freeing in a way, because when you have this very like competitive, threatened approach, I can only imagine that it's very lonely and also very vulnerable, like in not a good way, right? I think vulnerability can be a very positive thing, but I think that when you feel constantly threatened, like this person is going to take my business or whatever, like it winds up leaving a really bad taste in your mouth and makes business not a joy, right? And I think that when we recognize that, like, let's just say someone comes to you and they wind up going and working with your quote unquote competitor, and you know, you think that you could have helped them. Okay, you just say like, all right, it's, you know, it wasn't meant to be and there's more to go around, and like I'm happy for them that their business is growing.
Yeah, I mean, like when I was just working on my brand guide, when we worked together, you did something for me for my website, and then I wanted to work with someone to put together like an actual brand guide. And there's like mission statement and values and stuff. And I said, you know, in there, and I forgot exactly where I put it because we're still building it. Like the goal of my business is to help people get jobs. That can be that they work with me and I get them a job. That can also be that I refer them to somebody else and they get a job that way. But as long as that is accomplished, I'm doing my job. Like I'm doing what's meaningful to me and what I care about. So if I think of it in that way, there is no real competition. There's just different approaches. As you're talking, I'm thinking about a coach that I started my business with. So we started our businesses in parallel, and he was helping mechanical engineers. And I had someone come to me. She was a referral from another job seeker that I helped, who's in the tech industry. And she's sort of like on the edge between like software and hardware. And I said, hey, I would love to help you, but I think you're better suited for this other coach, because that's more of his strength. And behind the scenes, I was always checking in with him. I was like, hey, how is she progressing? Where is she now? And, has she gotten a job? My ability to care, my connection, it doesn't fade just because I pass them on to somebody else. Like, it's still
Yeah.
important to me. I still want to know that they're successful.
Yeah.
I know that sort of flies in the face of like everything that's out there about how to run a business. This feels more me. A good friend of mine who started his own jujitsu gym, one of the things that he said for himself was like he didn't want to have a kids class. He's not interested in having one. It doesn't fit who he is, his personality or anything like that. And he said to me, I want to run the business in a way that's true to me, true to who I am. And I said, yeah, I want to do the same thing. To me, I feel like the more I give other people, the more I get back. If it's a good person, like they'll be like, hey, I kind of feel like I need to help out in some way. Great. Now, if they don't do that, that's okay too. But I can sleep well at night knowing that I've done everything I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
and that's really important to me because sleep, as I've gotten older, has become way more important.
Oh yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, I mean, I think that we are fed so many ideas about how to run a business that are very predatory and are all about being territorial and staking your claim and all of that. And often this comes up in the context of like, male energy versus female energy. And I think that obviously that's not a strictly male or female thing, but it is more common in the kind of bro-y world of sales and business and all of that just doesn't speak to basically anyone who I know who's running a business from a place of, I want to make a positive impact, is not going to resonate with that style of growing a business. And of course it works, right? Like, sure, if it didn't work, people wouldn't be preaching it still. But I think that we have to be running businesses in ways that really align with who we want to be at our core. And like,
Exactly.
We have to be able to sleep at night and look ourselves in the mirror and feel proud of the work that we're doing. Quick pause. Can we talk about content for a second? If you're staring at a blank screen more often than you're hitting post, it might be because you're trying to create content that doesn't fit your actual strengths. It's kind of like wearing someone else's jeans. They may look super good on your friend, but you put them on and they are not comfortable and they just aren't doing your butt any favors. That's why I created the Content Marketing Power Type quiz. It's free and it helps you figure out the kind of content you were made to create. The kind of content that feels natural, sustainable, and actually connects with your people in a way that lights you up. In just 45 seconds, or maybe even 30 if you're quick about it, you're going to find out your power type and get custom recommendations to make content feel easier and more effective. Head on over to honeybeebold.com/quiz. That's HoneyBeebold.com/quiz. Take it and then DM me your result because I kind of need to know. All right, let's dive back into the episode. Yeah, I don't know if you've read Adam Grant. I think his book is called Give and Take. Have you read that book?
No, I haven't read that one.
Actually haven't read it. It's on my list. I have a very long list. But I've read about this concept that he talks about in that book, which is this idea that people are naturally like givers, takers, or matchers. And that the vast majority of people actually are matchers. Some people, I think you and I are probably in the giver category, right? Like we are natural givers. We want to give more than we receive. We feel more comfortable giving than receiving. Some people are takers, right? We all know them. We all know people like that. But most people, when they get something, right? And it doesn't have to be a transactional thing. There's no moral judgment associated with this, but it's just a natural thing that somebody helps you out, you want to help them back. It's a matching energy. And so I think that that's another piece of all of this is that like whether or not you are a natural giver, and I'm guessing that most of my listeners are probably natural givers just because I know who my listeners are, but whether you're a natural giver or not, there's this idea that when you give of yourself, most people want to match that energy. And so it creates, I think, a really beautiful like symbiosis when you have more people saying, I want to show up in this state of generosity and looking for ways to give in whatever ways I can. And knowing that there's a very good chance that that's going to come back to you in one form or fashion. And, some people who are maybe more like spiritually inclined might look at it from a karma perspective, but people who are not inclined in that direction I think it's also just a very practical thing. So regardless of how you look at it, like there's this matching energy that is very common. And so I just think that if more of us kind of showed up with that attitude, it would create a nicer world all around. But I think what we've kind of both been saying is that we see that, right? Like we see that in a very practical way. Like my network, very similar to your network that you've described, is very supportive and, everyone wants to help each other. So I think that really comes from that original place of like, I want to give to other people. They want to give me back in return. And it really creates this beautiful, like supportive network.
Yeah, and if you were to ask me like what's something that's surprising about running a business is that there are people that are out there that are supportive. I didn't think that would exist, and I didn't think that they would find me either. Because I remember like at the very beginning, I said, well, I'm going to start doing this thing. I don't know if it's going to work. And I just started putting stuff out there, and I was like, hey, here's some tips. And then people would start contacting me. And then along the way, I'd also start getting referrals from people who I've never met. And I would have to then go back to that person and say, hey, I'm super appreciative. Thank you. And one person in particular, she's gotten very popular on LinkedIn recently. And so at the very beginning, when she didn't have a huge following, she got me one of my first clients. And I said to her, like, I'd love to give you a thank you gift of some kind, even like flowers or something, and she was like, no, don't worry about it. She's like, I just want to support you. And I was like, oh, that's cool, And I think this goes back to the kind of work that you're doing. If you're doing something that's really meaningful and people buy into it and they're like, yeah, I want to support that, they're going to support you no matter what. That's like one of the reasons why I love what you do with Honey Be Bold, is that you're also trying to help small business owners, take that step and like try something, that's scary. It's scary to like run a business. What happens if you fail? And what are people going to think about you and all that? And then you're helping them do that. And then you're also sharing stories about yourself, like, the story about you and, wanting to have children. You're putting yourself out there. You're also giving other people the courage to do that. And so I love to support that mission, because like I wish I had that nudge to get started too. And so I think when people are like, they look at what I'm doing, trying to help job seekers get back to work, everyone has had that experience of being unemployed, a job not working out. And so they want to contribute. Some of my clients are like, hey, can I come back and be a coach for the program? I'm like, sure, if I could afford it, I'd love to, I'd love to have you. Yeah. And it's because like to get behind the mission. Everyone wants to like motivate people with the words they say. But I think the easiest way to motivate somebody is to just lead by example. Do it yourself first. Show people that this is important to you. You're going to attract that like energy. Now, I also get people who are like not supportive. Like I've had some people who are a little more transactional, like, hey, if I give you this, what do you give me? Like it's literally like in writing, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You're going to give me something. I never asked for it.
Right.
And I've also had people who are like, oh, you're predatory. I forget how they word it, like that I'm going after people who are in desperate situations and I'm trying to like benefit from. And I'm like, if I'm helping them get an offer, if I'm helping them get back to work in a couple of weeks, how is that being predatory? It's being supportive.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I think that you're always going to have people like that who can't see it any other way, right? Like those are the takers, right? In Adam Grant's formulation, right? Like people who are naturally drawn toward that approach, I think sometimes have a hard time even seeing that something else exists. Their defenses are up always, right? If someone is trying to help them, like they must want something from me. And I think that's a really like small way of living, right? It's sad to live with that kind of hanging over you in a way, to like always suspect that someone's trying to get something from you.
Also, luckily, like a very small percentage of people. So, let's say like if I talk to 100 people a week, one person might be angry, might be upset. It's very rare. It's a lot more rare now than it was when I first started. I've even had some people where they're like, let's say I post something and they'll put a very angry message, like, oh, I can't believe you're saying this. And then I respond to them, not matching their energy, but being more like, well, that's a good point, but let me, let's look at it a different way. And I'll get DMs from them saying, hey, I'm so sorry. That might have come off rude. I was just kind of upset, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. That's not what I expected.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to learn in running a business, but I think going back to the original, like the thesis of the conversation is, if you give more, like at least in what I'm doing, more empathetic and more compassionate about what people are going through, most times they're appreciative. Most times they're going to want
Yeah.
to support you too.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, one thing I wanted to hear from you is I think that there is a risk, I will say. Like, we have to acknowledge a risk that exists is that some people who are natural givers can sometimes give to the point where it tips into burnout or tips into like kind of an unhealthy giving of oneself to the point where you're like almost denying yourself. Have you ever gone into that or experience that like generosity to the point of overextending of yourself, and how have you navigated that?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Especially at the very beginning of running the business, it wasn't clear how much is enough. I was like, well, how much do I need to support somebody? And should I limit the amount of support? And over time I've kind of learned there are times when it makes sense, times when it doesn't. And for myself, I also have a family. So I need to limit how much I'm available. And there
Mm.
was a point where I felt like maybe now's the time to start growing a team instead of trying to do it all on my own. I think I got it wrong a couple times, but now what I do is I have hours where I'm available, and unless there's a special circumstance, I'm not going to be available outside of those hours. And then I try to have a member of my team available during the times when I'm not available. So there's always some sort of coverage for
Mm-hmm.
clients. Now, for other business owners, I give as much as I can. If I'm inundated with client work and I can't help out a business owner, it's going to have to
Mm-hmm.
wait because my clients come first. They're paying for the service. I want to make sure they're getting all the value that they're hoping for, and so I sort of prioritize it in that way. And then I have the hard limit so that I can spend time with my kids, so I can spend time with my wife, and so I also have time to recuperate. Like I said, I'm an introvert, so
Yeah.
every time I'm having those conversations, like it is draining. And I'm also
Mm-hmm.
very empathetic. I don't know if I would call myself an empath, but when someone feels pain, I feel it too. When someone feels happiness, I feel it too, and that can be very taxing.
Yeah.
So I have to manage my energy for my clients, for my family, and for myself. So I've been sort of playing a balancing act for the last 2 years. And again, the first year was really hard. So I barely had any time for myself. But this year I have my nights, I have my weekends. I'm able to take vacation, but it's because I've been learning along the way of like, what are my limits?
Yeah, I think that that's so important because I also have that tendency to have a hard time saying no. And like, I always want to give, 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 give. And that's my natural tendency. And often I have found myself in those situations where I'm like totally burnt out as a result, or I look up and I'm like, oh, when did I last take some time for myself? And so I think finding that balance is really, really key, and knowing your own natural tendencies and how to kind of work with them is really important. And I think that this is like maybe trite to say because it's said so often, but that idea of like you can't pour from an empty cup, right?
It's
And
true.
so when you give of yourself too much, you can't actually give to those around you to the extent that you want to. And so, I think this is true in business, it's true in our personal lives, it's true in all aspects of life, is just this idea that we have to be generous with ourselves as well, like to ourselves as well, not to the extent that we're sublimating ourselves. So yeah, I really loved this conversation. When I asked you to come on this episode to talk about generosity, you said like nobody's talking about this. And I think that we all need to be talking about this more. Like we all need to be just approaching our businesses from this lens, and it would really transform how businesses run if
Yeah.
if more businesses had this approach. And certainly, if you think kind of bigger scale, like imagine that Fortune 500 companies had this approach, it would be a very different world. But even those of us who are running these, small businesses, we're solopreneurs or running small teams, like it makes such an impact and really does allow our businesses to grow so much more than having this threatened perspective or kind of feeling like I have to get whatever I can. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add on this subject before we kind of wrap up.
Yeah, I want to add one thing. What's interesting is when you look at the really big companies companies, it seems as if they're in competition all the time and they never work together. But if you dig hard enough, you'll find places where they collaborate with each other. A perfect example is Google and Apple. In the phone space, they're technically in competition with each other because Apple creates iOS and the iPhones, and then Google creates Android operating system, and they create Android phones. But one of the things that I uncovered in the last year, I think it was, and this is probably something that a lot of people have known, is that Google actually pays Apple a ton of money to be the search engine for Apple.
Really?
And the idea there is that they're preventing Apple from creating their own search engine for the iOS. And it's strategic. Like, yeah, they might be fighting about other things, but when it comes to search, there's no fighting at all. It looks like they're just in competition all the time, but they still find opportunities to collaborate. And we can do that on a small scale too. Like, maybe there are things that we don't want to share with each other. Maybe we don't want to share the way we market or the way we sell or a technique or something. Fine. But then there are other opportunities where we could support each other. The other thing to remember too is there's really nothing new. Everything is a remix. Mark Bronson, he said that. Everything is a remix. Everything's been said before. Everything's been done before. So why not share that with people? And no one can duplicate who you are. Like, I'll never be Rachel. And Rachel will never be me. So even though we might have similar offerings or whatever, like, we're two totally different companies, two totally different spaces. Anybody who's thinking about starting a business, like, try to find that support network. Try to find someone who's done it before or someone who believes in what you're trying to do. And those people will help you get through some really tough times.
Yeah, absolutely. I really have gotten probably the most support from people who are technically my competition. So yeah, I totally agree. Jonathan, where can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you if people are interested in learning more?
Yeah, so you can do two things. You can either visit the website, www.readyabeinterview.com, and you can learn about the kinds of things that we do for job seekers. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. So my stub is in/Jonathan, JONATHAN, Corrales, CORRALES, and connect with me and send me a DM.
Awesome. And I will put all those links in the show notes. And I highly recommend connecting with Jonathan on LinkedIn, because even if you're not technically a job seeker in this world, he posts such insightful information and content that is helpful no matter where you're coming from. So definitely recommend connecting with him. Thank you so much for taking the time, and always appreciate your insights and your generosity.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
That was such a great conversation. I'm so glad I thought to bring Jonathan on to talk about this topic, which is so near and dear to my heart. I hope you got so much out of this conversation. I know I did. Even though generosity is such an important part of how I run my business, I learn so much from Jonathan every time I talk to him, and how I can show up in ways that are as giving as possible while honoring myself and the type of business that I want to build. So I just really enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you got so much from it, and that you understand that generosity is not separate from strategy. It is what's going to help you build the business that you want more than anything. And this is such a great kickoff to season 3, which is going to be just all about deeper conversations, values aligned growth, and getting very real about the topics that are going to help you build the type of business that helps you make the biggest impact in the world. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. All right, beautiful human. That's a wrap on this episode of Bold Women in Business. This episode was brought to you by my company, Honey Be Bold, with music by Shmukulele. But before you go, don't forget to take the Content Marketing Power Type quiz at honeybebold.com/quiz, because when your content fits your power type, showing up gets way easier and your marketing actually starts working for you. Until next time, stay bold, stay kind, and keep doing it your way.